All right. So good afternoon, everybody. I think it's be afternoon when you're gathered together, and I'll be speaking to you today. So I'm going to use a PowerPoint presentation, and then if you would like this material, you can send me an email, and I'll be giving it to you. So I'm going to go straight into my PowerPoint here and share my screen, and hope it works well. I just read a story of a professor in India who was giving a lecture over Zoom at a university, and he spoke for 2 hours straight, and at the end of the lecture he discovered that he was on mute the entire time. So please let me know if there's any problem, the one who's recording this. But I just wanted to begin by thanking each one of you who are serving on a voluntary basis to keep AYLF moving at your respective campuses. I know it's not easy sometimes to gather people, especially under the strange circumstances of this time with Corona and so forth. But I just pray that God blesses you for striving to make your contribution toward better leadership within Uganda and beyond. I just wanted to begin with giving you this idea, since most of you are still at campus, that you realize that university is not just for education. In fact, there are 4 important things you should be doing while you're at campus. Education, of course, is first and foremost. But beyond that, this is the time in your life to gain exposure, to get involved in different programs that broaden your understanding and help you to see beyond just the narrow disciplines of your own course. That's second, exposure. Thirdly is experience. As soon as you finish campus, people will be asking you, what experience do you have? So if there's any small experience you can have to list on your CV, then it's a plus for you. And being a AYLF coordinator is a kind of experience that you can list as well. And then the last one, number 4, while you're at campus, it's very important for you to focus on expanding your network. And I want to explain how this relates to AYLF. But all of us have heard of people who got, first-class degrees, but now they are walking the streets, they are jobless, just because they neglected these other 3 aspects. So I want to focus on this last one, the aspect of expanding your network. I would really want you to leave after this weekend with the idea that AYLF is really going to be your lifelong network. It's hard for you to see it at this stage, but because I'm older than you and I've seen how this plays out over time, I can say to you that this could be something that you'll be part of for the rest of your life. Because you're linking up through AYLF with like-minded, upwardly mobile friends of your generation that you are building up for your own future. So it is a network that you can choose to be connected to for the rest of your life. And it's really your future. So it's up to us to make AYLF something that's dynamic, relevant, and transformational to Uganda, Africa, and the world. So yes, we do see AYLF as a platform for us to influence emerging leaders in Uganda. And we want to make it something that's dynamic and impacting here. But most of all, it is for you. It is your circle of relationships, a circle composed of bright, like-minded friends that want to do something of significance with their lives. So try to see AYLF as something that is, you're investing in your own future. With AYLF, we have seen that most of us, most of our members want two things. You want to get established in the practical side of life, to get your education, job, get married, have a family and career. But besides that, most of you guys that are attracted to AYLF also want to use it to add value to the world, to make a difference, to make a contribution. And we want to support you on this journey. And both of these things, your personal goals and your desire to influence beyond just your own self-interest, will be enhanced through AYLF. So just try and see AYLF at the university level as like an entry point for a long-term matrix of significant relationships that you will have for the rest of your life. We've been operating AYLF for 12 years, and we're seeing this playing out. People are sticking together. There's even been marriages among AYLF people, because you're combining yourself with people that are moving in the same direction as you, people that are like-minded and visionary. So after university, we're also building up AYLF alumni networks. And these are composed of small groups that will continue even after university, so that you can stay connected, get inspired, meet inspirational people, get mentoring, and generally just support each other through your personal and your career journey. So yeah, my opening point is to try and see this thing not as an NGO or some organization that teaches leadership, good as that may be. That's not the biggest thing you get from AYLF. The most important thing you will get is a network of or we call it a family of friends, which is quite rare among your generation, that will be moving with you through your various stages of life. Okay, today I've been asked to talk about what we call the AYLF DNA. Typically when we do a gathering, maybe half of the people are new. So we like to go over this, what we call the DNA, just to get people on the same page. I know some of you have been involved in this previously, so you already have some idea of this. So this will be like a review of our vision and values for you. All right, I hope you're following me well, and we'll just continue with the presentation. And I'll begin by sharing with you something a little bit about myself. So I'm married with two grown children. I'm actually a dual citizen, a Uganda and US, both citizenship. And I'm a co-founder and managing director of something called Cornerstone Development Africa, which is kind of like the parent body that AYLF grew out of. And so I am a patron and a mentor and a co-founder of AYLF as well. I'm based in Uganda, but work throughout the 7 countries in East Africa, which is basically all the countries that border Uganda, but we also include Burundi as well. I bring you greetings from my family. My son on the right of the picture and his wife and their 2 kids live here in Kampala. So we're having them with us, and my daughter in the red and her husband, who people say looked like Lionel Messi, although he's much taller. They live in the States, and they have a little 1-year-old, and they've been safe throughout this Corona time that has hit the States pretty badly. But I grew up in Congo, Rwanda. I've been in Uganda. I think the first time I came here, I was like 4 years old. I've lived in Burundi a little bit, Kenya, went to high school in Kenya. But I made Uganda my home for the last 40 years or so. My parents were missionaries. This is me on the left. There were 5 boys in our family. 1 more was born after this picture. So my parents came to Congo even before I was born. I grew up in Africa and with Africans. Yeah, a lot of my playmates when I was young were Africans, and it's very much part of who I am. But in my family, when we finished high school here in Africa, we were sent back to the US for university. So I left Africa for university, and I really didn't have any plans to come back. All my brothers have remained in the States. I'm the only one who came back. But when I was in university, I was starting to ask myself those big questions of life, which is, things like, what am I studying for? What is the purpose of my life? What should I do with my life? It was a time of questioning and soul searching, and it kind of led to what I would call like a spiritual reawakening that changed the course of my life. And it kind of led me to come back to Africa. I met my wife while I was at university campus. She was also studying development studies, so she knew where we were headed. And then about 30 years ago, I teamed up with a couple other American friends, and we created Cornerstone Development Africa, which is an NGO that has a network of schools and youth leadership programs around the region, including AYLF. But yeah, I got into this just because I felt like I should invest my life in things that count in the bigger scheme of things. I see one lifetime of maybe 70 to 90 years here on Earth as being short compared to the incredibly amazing, vast, ancient system we are in. They estimate the universe is 14 billion years. So, looking at a human life and looking at the age and the scope of the system we are in, I just decided I wanted to invest my life in something that had value in the bigger scheme of things. And I got into this work that we are part of here in Africa. And I would say the young people in Africa are one of my greatest inspirations, mentoring, especially the next generation of emerging leaders. And it's what I've been doing for the last 30 years, and I hope to do it for maybe another 30 or so if I can survive that long. I also want to make myself available to you guys who are listening to this, to be a mentor to you. And you can link up with me on my contacts, which are on the screen here. Yeah, just feel free to connect. I'll give these contacts later on. Here they are. It's always my name, whether on Facebook or Instagram, and my name, and then Gmail. So please, yeah, again, if you would like a copy of this, you can shoot me an email. I need you to email me, and then I'll respond with sending you this copy. Okay, so the past year has not been easy for all of us. It's been one of the most extraordinary experiences of our lifetime, even those of us who are older than most of you. Some people are calling it World War III, and it's like we are fighting an invisible enemy, which I guess is an improvement from past wars where we were fighting each other. But we're here this weekend to try and reboot our work as the various universities reopen. We've been doing a lot of things online, but as the universities open, we will scale up our small groups and other activities on campus. But we're also here to revisit our vision and our values, to gain inspiration from one another, and just to strengthen our bond of friendship with one another in this network, this family of friends of AYLF. And with that, collectively, to make a difference in this region in our lifetime. So this weekend, yeah, we're just gathering people to try and get ourselves refocused and continue to influence the generations of emerging leaders at the university level. AYLF has spread to over 100 campuses in East Africa. And we've been having 3 big gatherings a year in Uganda, Kenya, and one of the Francophone countries of Burundi, Rwanda, or Congo. And I have to say, you know, for me personally, it's been a real joy. When I look back over the last 12 or 13, many highlights of my life have been coming from just these kind of gatherings. I've made many great friends during these times. But today we're talking about the AYLF DNA, and in this discussion, I'll be focusing a lot on the vision aspect of it, the philosophy, but there are other aspects that will be discussed during this time you're together, the small group meetings, some of the curriculum that we're trying to offer, and other things that are taking place that are part of our programs. But when we're talking about the AYLF DNA, we're also talking about keeping the vision, the philosophy, the methods, the vocabulary pure and consistent. As something multiplies and grows over time, mutations can develop that lack the integrity of the original concepts. Just like coronavirus has been mutating. So coming back to the review of the DNA is just to help us stay together around shared values, shared philosophy. But there are ways that the mutation can take place. For example, there are 2 extremes. You know, we're trying to bring in a spiritual element, but sometimes people can pull AYLF toward the specific religious subculture that they're most familiar with. And when we do that, when we align it only with our church or our religion, we lose the element of inclusivity. The other extreme would be when we take AYLF too secular and we lose the spiritual power that is behind it. And we believe that every human being has these 4 aspects of life. And one of them is the spiritual. And there are many leadership programs out there today, but a lot of them leave out that spiritual aspect, or they present it within the context only of one denomination, like Catholic or Muslim or so forth. So we're trying to find something that has depth, but is still inclusive, because we don't need one more thing that divides us. But at the same time, these 4 aspects of life, the spiritual, the mental, the social, and the physical, they're like the 4 legs of the chair that you are sitting on right now. And if you remove any one of these, you get off balance. And as this diagram shows, when all these things are healthy, there's a place in the middle there where they unite, and you have some kind of sense of well-being toward life. So this is very much part of our DNA, of our thinking. And when we lose awareness of that spiritual aspect, our lives can easily get overly diverted towards sensual pleasures, material acquisitions, or the egocentric pursuit of fame and power that we see in a lot of politicians. And we lose this aspect of service for the betterment of humanity and contributing toward a lasting significance in terms of the larger eternal scheme of things that I was talking about earlier. Okay, so with AYLF, in a nutshell, our ultimate goal has been to try and transform the leadership culture at the university level in East Africa. And we talk about trying to develop a new breed of leadership, leaders of integrity that are more principled, that are more unity-minded, that are more constructive in their outlook, and more collaborative, less divisive in their methods. So this is in a nutshell what we're doing with our focus on the university student leaders. You know, we've all gone through elections here in Uganda, and we've had a couple of guys from our network who have become newly elected members of parliament. Here are two of them. Both of them are men of character, integrity, and faith. I've been with each of these guys for more than 10 years. We've had many others within our broader family of friends contest at lower levels of government and within all political parties. For those of you who don't like the color yellow, we have our sister Flavia, the newly elected woman member of parliament for Kasanda district, and she's been a long-term friend of ours. She's been with AYLF right from the beginning. And yeah, we're not really looking at one particular party. We want to get good people within all the parties. And then we have within the ANT party, we have Matanda Abu Bakr, who has been the chairperson for the National Youth Council, but he's also the National Youth Coordinator for the Alliance of National Transformation. And he's former guild president of IUIU and a very good long-term member of AYLF. So I'm just putting these up as examples. There are many others, but it does show you that we are starting to make inroads politically. But for many of us who are not politically inclined and we exercise leadership in many other areas, AYLF is equally welcoming to anyone who has a desire to see their life become a contribution toward a better nation and a better world. So we believe in you guys, the student leaders of today, the emerging leaders that will become national leaders in the region over the next couple decades. And so with AYLF, we want to try and you know, gain inspiration and get leadership trainings and connect with exemplary role models, but also to help you stay connected with like-minded peers and just help you navigate your leadership journey throughout life so that your highest potential and your best values don't get stifled, compromised, or wasted. All right, I think I told you this information earlier, but we have been operating gatherings alongside the National Prayer Breakfast, and that's a group that we've been connected with. But we've had activities in Burundi, in Congo, in Kenya, and in Uganda over the years. I want to shift now more toward the values and the philosophy and the vision of AYLF. You know, every kind of movement requires a clear set of shared values to kind of keep it strong over the years. You have to have shared values to move, to keep people together. And it's not easy to find solid yet common ideological grounds across all these divisions that exist among us as human beings, and to find values that can serve as a basis for inspiration, for reconciliation and reflection, as well as a model for leadership. But AYLF developed as the youth wing of a larger movement that began in the US about 60 to 70 years ago. And there's a man called Abram Verady. It was around the time of World War II. And he saw that people in leadership needed some kind of fellowship. So he created small group fellowships for leaders. And they met simply around the teachings of Jesus. And I'll explain how that works, regardless of their backgrounds. And they hold each other accountable to the basic core principles which he taught in order to bring change to their cities, their nations, and their own lives. So we've kind of come as a offshoot of something that's been operating for many years, for many decades. Many of these groups met at the beginning of the day for breakfast, and that's how the term prayer breakfast came about. It first became a large national event during the time of US President Eisenhower. He was a 5-star general during World War II, and then he became Supreme Commander of NATO. Then in 1953, he was elected US President, and he created this annual event that has been happening in the US and has been replicated around the world, where the leaders gather across political divides. And just a few weeks ago, the US 2021 National Prayer Breakfast took place. There's a website here where you can have a look at it. It's quite remarkable. In it are the kind of testimonies from Obama, from Clinton. Jimmy Carter sent in a note, George Bush, and the current President Biden. And these gentlemen who are pictured up here, these are US congressmen and senators. Two of them are Democrat and 2 of them are Republican. There are fellowship groups that meet in the US Capitol across party lines. You know, when we see the media, all we see is the political divisions, but these guys are meeting and just praying together despite their differences. And if you look at this video, which is at this website of the 2021 National Prayer Breakfast, it had to be virtual just because of the Corona situation. I've been to it many, many times in person. No US president has missed it for the last 70 years, but this time it was online and the whole thing is there for your viewing. It's very inspirational, and you can see the philosophy that we borrowed from this powerful movement that has brought together leaders from all over the world, but especially in the US, across the divisions. There was a Uganda prayer breakfast that took place in October 8th. It was at State House in Entebbe. I was invited to it. There was only 70 people. I was the only Muzungu who was there. The rest of the invited guests were top people, the president, the first lady, Chief Justice, Speaker of the Parliament, and so forth. So it's like a worldwide tradition to try and find time with the national leaders to gather despite their differences. I first came into contact with this movement about 30 years ago through this man, Doug Coe. He was like a mentor to me for 25 years. This picture I took with him in 2007. He passed away a few years ago, but I was just privileged to have him in my life. And many of the things that I'm sharing with you, I learned it from him. He was quite a remarkable man. He was listed in 2005, along with the likes of Rick Warren, Joyce Myers, T.D. Jakes, as one of the top 25, what they call evangelical leaders in the States. He didn't really like that term, but he was seen to be one of these very influential people behind the scenes. When they made this magazine cover, they called him up and asked him to provide a picture of himself so they could be included in the magazine. And instead, he asked them to take him out of it. He preferred to work in the background, but they still mentioned him even without the photo. They picked one off the internet. But he went to every country in the world during his lifetime, all the countries of Africa. Museveni knows him personally. Kagame knows him. All these guys. And he tried to promote peace and reconciliation. This is him in the middle with George Bush Sr. But he also met with the leader of the PLO, Yasser Arafat. he taught me a lot of how, as a Christian, to learn to see Muslims as brothers and sisters. This has been a tough one for these two great religions, the Muslim and Christian faiths that compose more than half of humanity. But Doug Coe here, he was talking to Yasser Arafat, the head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And he would meet with the likes of Pope Francis here. So he was like a global ambassador for peace behind the scenes. And he championed this vision of the prayer breakfast all over the world. This is him with a member of parliament who's also a product of our programs, Honorable Joshua Anyarwach. And on the left here is Chris Rakasisi, who is currently Senior Presidential Advisor. I was just with Chris this morning. He's part of my small group every Wednesday morning. For the last 20 years, I've met with a group that I have breakfast with. And Chris and I were together this morning. Chris spent over 20 years on death row in Luzira, condemned section. He was Minister of Defense under Obote, and he was arrested when the NRM came to power. I went to see him in prison for 10 years straight. I visited him on death row, and when he was pardoned by the president, he came out and people feared him. He had nowhere to begin, so I invited him to my small group, and we have been friends for the last 10 years. This is when I traveled with him to the US. He went to the prayer breakfast with Joshua here, who was a member of parliament, and it's just an example of the networks that you guys are building right now at this time of your life. There's nothing more stronger than your network. Some people say your network becomes your net worth. So AYLF really is your baby. It's you are founding it at your respective campuses, and it'll build your future. The more you invest in it, it'll be something that you can be part of the rest of your lives. But yeah, AYLF came out of the youth wing of this larger movement, the prayer breakfast, and the founding fathers discovered something. They discovered that if you stick to those simple, basic precepts of Jesus, you get buy-in, obviously from the different Christian denominations, but also from sincere Muslims and people of other faiths. So I want to describe how that works. But this is why in AYLF we've chosen the principles, precepts, and person of Jesus as our common ground. By the way, Jesus wasn't a Christian. He was Jewish. He prayed on Saturdays. There was nothing like Christianity for at least a couple hundred years after him. So yeah, I'm a Christian, but Jesus was not a Christian. You do not have to be a Christian to follow him. There's nowhere in the Bible that says you should become a Christian. It says you should become a new creation. So the basic truths of Jesus, they're simple and they're self-evident to all people of good hearts. For example, that human beings need a change of heart from being selfish to loving others. That's the real meaning of being born again, having a change from a self-centered orientation toward life, toward one that loves and serves others. He also taught that it's better to love than to hate. It's better to forgive than to seek revenge, and that we should do unto others as we would want them to do to us. And that we who are more privileged have a responsibility to care for the least in society. And that all of us are God's children. We're all created by God and we bear his image, so we are brothers and sisters to one another. And that one day you will have to give an account to your maker for how you have lived your life. So you can sum up the entire teachings of Jesus just on these points. And you can see that nobody of a good-hearted nature would have a problem with this. These are basic truths that everybody can benefit. And Jesus was universal in his teaching. He said, whoever hears these words and puts them into practice will be like a wise man who built his house on a rock. So in AYLF, we are accommodating everybody, regardless of their religious background. I like this quotation by the author Bruxy Cabby that speaks to this philosophy that we're trying to understand today. He said, "Consider the possibility that Jesus is in an unparalleled position to offer spiritual help to all people regardless of their backgrounds. He's a rabbi to the Jew, he's a prophet to the Muslims, he's an avatar to the Hindus. An avatar means an incarnation of the divine. He's an enlightened one to the Buddhist. He's a son of God to the Christians. He's a wise teacher to the secularists, the people who don't really adhere to any religion. And he's a friend of sinners to the rest of us." That last phrase comes from the Bible. He was a friend to everybody. So yeah, we're seeing this kind of picture that Jesus is a connection point through all these different Christian denominations who don't often love each other. All these groups often are in competition with each other. And yet Jesus said the one thing he wanted his followers to be known by was their love for one another. He said, "By this, all men will know that you are my followers because you love one another." John 13:35. And yet, what do we see? We see the Pentecostals don't love the Catholics don't love the Protestants, the SDAs, the so forth. They don't really have the kind of solidarity, yet they all claim to be following Jesus. So he is a common ground, and we're trying to bring this understanding across divisions. But also when you take it to the wider religions of the world, that quote that I just gave, Jesus has a connection to the Muslims, to the Hindus. If you go to India at the time of Christmas, they're selling pictures of Jesus on the streets. The Buddhists see Jesus as an enlightened one. They see him very close to their Buddha, who they considered enlightened. So there's no other name. There's a connecting point that you get with Jesus. You don't get if you were to put any other name in the middle of that circle. So some people say, well, why don't you guys just say God is our connecting point? Well, it should be God, but right now there's a kind of a confusion around what does God stand for? There are still radicals like Al-Shabaab who think that God wants them to kill people. There are people who think God is a mountain, a river, and we have our small gods in Africa. And there's just a lot of confusion around God. So when you put God in the middle there, you get all kinds of crazy variations because no one has ever seen God. But with Jesus, you get this historical figure who left his teachings in the Injil, as the Muslim calls it, or the Gospels. And what he stood for is clear, and you can build an ideological common ground around that. One of the slogans we use in AYLF that speaks to this connectivity that we have with every human being is that there is no them, it is just us. This was really one of the radical teachings of Jesus. Throughout history, human beings are constantly dividing themselves into competing groups: the Black, the white, the Muslim, the Christian, Uganda, Rwanda, the Acholi, the Baganda, the Banyankole. And all of these differences turn into battles of us versus them. And we have this really bad in the US right now with the Republicans and the Democrats, but it's into everything. You can see in sports, the guys who support Chelsea and there's guys who support Arsenal. They've never been to those places, but they'll die defending their team. There's something that human beings are doing that is always trying to separate and position themselves over and against others. But Jesus had this radical message. He basically said, people, there is no them. All this fighting and conflict, it is just us. And one time he was speaking to the crowds in Matthew 23, and he's in the crowds. He told the crowds, you are all brothers and sisters because you share one Father. And we see this in in our scriptures, but we seem to have forgotten it. But he told us that to love our neighbor and even to love our enemy, those are the people who really deserve to be called children of God. There's only a few places where he gave a definition of what it takes to be called a child of God. And he said, love your enemy, and then you will be children of the Most High. So in Matthew 5 and Luke 6, that comes out. So one of the main things in AYLF is to just bridge these divisions and using the principles of Jesus. So in conclusion, let me just run you through, there's been 8 core values that are part of this wider prayer breakfast network that we are part of. The first core value is the aspect of relationships and this concept of being a family of friends. Family speaks to the long-term nature of it. You know, when you have a brother or sister, you're brothers and sisters forever. Even if your brother's in prison, he's still your brother. But friends speaks to the quality. There are some families, they're not very friendly to each other. So we focus in AYLF on maintaining relationships. They're very powerful. That's what our small group concept is all about. So we have this worldwide vision, but it's grounded in small groups, members coming together, meeting regularly for fellowship, for accountability, for partnership. So that's the second core value. It's worldwide, but it has a grounding in small groups. The third one, we take Jesus as our common ground. We reference our values to the things that he championed because his teachings are respected universally. We don't try to impose our religion on others. We look for where's the commonality. And these values are things that Jesus talked about that everybody of good heart knows is the truth. The fourth one, we seek to work for reconciliation and unity across the divides. One of the biggest problems in the world now is division, if not the biggest division. In Africa alone, Africa is spending $45 billion per year on military and defense. To fight who? To defend against who? Fellow Africans. 45 billion per year. If you multiplied 45 billion times 10 years, there would be roads all over Africa, free education, free medical. But so much of our budgets are going into these conflicts and these fears to one another. So we want to learn to love our neighbors, learn to love the enemy as Jesus taught. Number 5, you know, we take personal transformation seriously. You can't expect the society to be transformed unless there's a better human being. And, you know, people's hearts and minds have to be renewed, have to be transformed. And this is something that we try to do through the material that we study, to get this kind of mentality and these precepts of Jesus, because he gives us a spirit of renewal, a spirit of that makes us new creations, and that's the transformation that will create a transformed world. Number 6, we have faith for a better world. We don't think that the world is just going to hell or to burn. We think that the kingdom of God, as Jesus wanted it, can come on earth as it is in heaven, and we can see a more beautiful world that our hearts want. A world where there is harmony, there is justice, and the poverty and the injustice and suffering is diminished. So we're looking for a transformed world. Number 7, we focus on the essentials. It's so easy to start dividing each other on theological differences, but we would rather look at what are the ideological core concepts that we can agree on. So we say unity on the essentials, tolerance on the non-essentials, and love overall. And the essentials, as Jesus put it, was to love. He said, the sum of all the law and the prophet, the Sharia and the prophets, is just this: love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. But what do? We leave that one and we go on arguing and quarreling over other things that aren't the core essence. Lastly, in this movement where we reach out to leaders, and we develop leaders, there's no one leader. There's no Aga Khan, there's no chief mufti. We're just looking at Jesus. There's no political leader who is behind this. It's just a movement that continues to look for inspiration, find common ground around his teachings. And we feel like, everything rises and falls on leadership. So if the leaders of the world can have these kind of perspectives, we can see a transformation. Okay, so in closing, just a few more points. Here are 4 pillars that I often talk about that we boil our work down to: the aspect of leadership, the aspect of integrity, the aspect of friendship, and the aspects of reconciliation and unity. These are like 4 pillars that our work is resting on. Yeah, so in summary, we're looking for this lifelong friendship with other like-minded East Africans, number 1. We're looking to inspire one another so that we all maximize our potential. We're looking to demonstrate that we can transcend the tribal, the national, the religious divisions that have been plaguing this region and are causing conflict right up to now. We also want to transform the leadership culture, especially cultures of corruption and conflict, right from the university level. And 5th, we want to encourage you to cultivate the spiritual side of your life, to stay true to your best values and your principles from within whatever religious tradition you come from. So that's my teaching for today. Love to all of you. These are my contacts. You can get a hold of me through them. And if you would like this presentation, I can send it to you. But it just been good to see you guys meeting up this weekend. I wish I could be with you, but I'm trying to limit my physical appearance. With people, as I'm in that older age bracket that COVID is not very friendly to. But I wish you guys a successful retreat, and stay connected, and reach out to me if you would like, this material. All right, thank you.